Hello everyone, I'm Lean from Studio Kato and I am so happy to be back with another video. Today I am sharing a couple of cards using the BetterPress of the Month club from Spellbinders. I really love the Spellbinders clubs and the BetterPress is one of my favorite tools ever. So I always enjoy these kits. And this one is a registration BetterPress plate. If you don't know what that is, it's a way to layer BetterPress images on top of each other with an easy guide, as you can see here. This is an acetate piece that has some guidelines printed on that are really helpful to layer these images as they are intended. Now, I am first going to use the product as intended, so I'm going to follow the guide delivered with the product. And it's really hard to see these lines on camera. In real life, they are very, very clear. I have never had an issue reading the lines on the acetate, even though the lines or the grid of the BetterPress is visible through it. The lines are colored, so they stand out pretty nicely from the black lines of the BetterPress. No issues there. And all you do is you puzzle the images, the BetterPress plates, into their guidelines on the acetate, and then you can ink them up. Make sure to wipe away any excess ink on the acetate because that will transfer to your paper if you're not careful. And then you can just roll it through your die cutting machine as usual. So all the registration plates is just a bunch of plates, a bunch of smaller plates usually, that you can use together with the guide to layer them on top of each other. Now, one important thing to note here, because you're going to see me struggle a little bit with the ink, I am not using BetterPress inks for this. I had a very clear color palette in mind for this card, and actually all of the cards that I made with the August Club Kids from Spellbinders. So I didn't find those colors in my BetterPress inks. I used Concord 9th inks instead. And they are a little bit too wet for the BetterPress plates. So they bead up a little bit on the plates, and you might not get a super clear transfer of the ink onto your paper. Now, usually this isn't noticeable at all, but these plates have quite a big surface area. And that's where you notice it. So there are a couple of spots in white that are supposed to be colored, but because of the nature of this image, because of the splatter image, it's not as noticeable. So I wasn't going to bother about it too much, but usually it's a lot easier to ink these plates up if you're just using the BetterPress inks. Pigment inks I have found are a little bit easier as well in general, although I don't have a ton of those. And you can use pretty much any ink you want if it's a fine line image. You're not going to have any issues with that. For my sentiment, I am using the small die of the month, which has some really fun basic sentiments. I really like the font of this one because it's sort of a bold font, but it is small enough to not take up too much space on your card. I really like that combination. I die cut the shadow layer of these words from black cardstock twice, layered those up. I also added the scripty layer in 2 layers of white, and then on top of that I am gluing a layer of holographic cardstock, which I thought would be a fun look with the rest of this card. And I'm actually going to use more of that holographic cardstock to act as a matting layer, but it's only going to show on the left side of the card and on the bottom of the card. So I'm sort of offsetting my trimmed down panel later. So it's in the top right corner, and you can see some holographic cardstock shining through on the opposite side of the card. I really like that look. Janos Makula does it quite often, so I definitely got the inspiration from her. Now, to add that image or that panel to my card, I want to prop it up, so I trimmed a couple of pieces of extra cardstock to layer behind it. These are a little bit smaller than my BetterPress panel, so they can easily hide behind it, but they are going to add some really nice sturdy dimension to my panel. I'm just using Barely Art Precision Craft glue for all of my adhesive today, because it's a wonderful glue. I've been using it for a while now, and yeah, no complaints. Now, this is the intended use of the BetterPress plate. You get a really fun background of splatters. It's so stunning. But I wanted to expand my horizons with this plate a little bit. Now, when I want to do that, I always try to use it as intended first, so I can see how it all comes together. And then it's easier for me to understand how everything works, how all the pieces work. And that way I can go into my second card a little bit more knowledgeable about the product. So I will make something without using the registration guide and still use the images of the splatters, and it all comes together really nicely. So for this card, this is finished. I did add some gems at the end that you can see in the finished picture. But yeah, that is it. I really like the colorful hugs enclosed. It's a perfect sentiment for crafters. There are a bunch of fun little sentiments in the small die of the month for August. Now, this is the large die of the month, and I will have another video featuring 2 cards that I made with the large die of the month, because these blooms are so fantastically bold. I love it. And because this one is so big, I thought it would be really fun to BetterPress the splatters onto that bloom. Now, I wanted to do it directly onto the die cut bloom. I am not doing that here. I just cut this bloom out as a guide. This is going to be my registration template. So I actually turned it over so the good side is facing the gray grid of the BetterPress, and the back side is facing up towards us now. Because when you're doing BetterPress, you also lay the BetterPress plates facing up, because you're going to create a mirror image here. So it's important that if you're creating your own guide for a die cut image, you face the bad side of the die up towards you. Now, I am tracing these BetterPress plates with a pen just on top of the die cut. And I am not doing this because I want to be precise. I just want to know roughly where these splatters are already, so I don't overlap them completely with the next layer of splatters that I'm going to use. You'll also see that this is the only layer that I'm going to create this little guide for. I am just going to I'm not going to trace any more press plates. If you're adding a ton of these images, you might want to do it over and over again, trace around your BetterPress plates. I won't be doing that today because I'm only really doing 3 layers and only 2 with the BetterPress. Now, if I wanted to be really precise, I would have die cut this flower again and glued that on my plate. So where you can see that A2 size panel taped down on my plate, I would have taped another flower die cut, so I could have been really precise about the placement of these splatters. I didn't think, one, that was necessary because it's just splatter. It doesn't have to be precise. And 2, I didn't think it would work that well because of this die in particular. So this flower die has some grooves in the petals. They're etched lines into the flower and they're a wonderful detail. It's one of the things I love about Spellbinders dies. They have a ton of etched details in their die cuts. But because of the grooves in that paper, I don't think the splatters would have stemmed well along those grooves. I think you would have seen some white lines where the grooves are, and I didn't want that. So that's why I'm die cutting it after all of this is done. Now, my final step here with the BetterPress plates is to foil, because I love foiling with my BetterPress plates, and I wanted to do it here to add some shiny splatter as well. So I'm adding tiny pieces of fuchsia flower foil underneath some splatters that I already lined up here. Again, I lined them up, but also it's splatter. It doesn't have to be lined up perfectly. I just made sure that some splatters overlap the others, but they don't overlap each other completely. That's what I mean by lining up in this case. Now, I did have a little bit of trouble foiling it, but again, because it's splatter, it doesn't really matter, and I went ahead with what I had anyway. It didn't foil perfectly, and I have a couple of ideas of why that is. One, it didn't foil on the edges of the BetterPress images already, so the inked images. It didn't foil perfectly on the edges of those, and I think it is because the BetterPress presses into the cardstock. So there is a dimensional difference a little bit. It's just a tiny bit lower than the rest of the card. So that is, the edges of that is where it didn't foil perfectly. And also this is colored foil. I have always had tiny issues with foiling with anything other than your standard metallics for some reason. So yeah, every foil foils a little bit differently, but I think this one worked out fine because it's just splatters. It doesn't have to be precise. Once the foiling was done, I die cut it, and I am going to layer it on top of that extra flower that I used to create my little template earlier in the BetterPress. And I also die cut the center of the flower that is included in the large die of the month. And now with this beautifully splattered flower, all I have left to do is make a background. It's a really easy one. And then put my flower arrangement on top of it. For the background, I'm using powder cardstock from Concord 9th. It is one of my favorite cardstocks to use as a background, a really lovely pale blue. And I am moistening it up a little bit with some water from a spray bottle. I'm dabbing the excess water away immediately with some paper towel. And because it's moistened, it's going to work a little bit better with the 3D embossing folder I'm going to use here. This is the Peacock Motif embossing folder. And that's going to create a really lovely, elegant background pattern. Now, to ground my floral images or my floral arrangement a little bit better on my card, I'm going to add a frame. It's one of my favorite things to do. I add so many frames to cards. And now, if you're not a collector of frame dies like I am, you can get by with your nesting dies. These are the mirrored arches or the mirrored arch labels from Spellbinders. These are the nesting dies. And I just used 2 consecutive sizes, lined them up with some purple tape, and I die cut those twice from white cardstock and once from a gold cardstock. And I layered those up, and that creates a really nice frame. So if you have nesting dies, you have frame dies. You just have to die cut them together. I'm going to layer that on top of my Peacock Motif background. It's such a lovely background. 3D embossed backgrounds don't usually show up well for me on camera. It's probably something I'm doing wrong with filming, but they look incredible. You don't really have to add much to them. They're some of my favorite background products to use. 3D embossing folders are generally pretty inexpensive as far as card making supplies go. And they are so fun as a background. I love embossing folders. Yeah. these foliage pieces are all from the large die of the month. I die cut them from colored cardstock and then added some ink blended shading to them as well. The little hello is from the small die of the month that I used earlier in this video as well. And that's it. A really simple card, but with such a fun and unique flower image. I really love the splatters on the flower. I would have loved to make some more splatter flowers on colored cardstock, maybe. Some tone-on-tone splatter would have looked really fun, I think. And there you have it, 2 fun BetterPress cards with the BetterPress plate of the month from Spellbinders. If you're unfamiliar with registration BetterPress plates, don't be too intimidated by them. They are really fun to use, and obviously, as I showed in this video, you can just wing it as well. You don't have to follow that registration template. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you liked the cards. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up on this video. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what your favorite card is of these 2. And yeah, all I have left to do is thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!